Some time ago, my wife asked if I could make a small wooden book cabinet to replace the fiberboard abomination that currently sits next to the reading chair, which is the chair that we sit in to read stories to our, various progeny. And so I thought about some ideas. I drew up a rough sketch and I got to work around the 24th of August. So that's 2 months now that this project took me. And now the challenge is, well, how in the world do you distill 2 months of work into, a coherent 45-minute video without excluding important plot points? So I found that to be quite challenging. Each of the elements of this cabinet, the tabletop, the drawer, the door, the carcass of the cabinet itself, that could be its own video. But I abide, I persevere. And instead of multiple slightly painful videos, I've brought you one extremely excruciating video. This will be the first time I've used any wood from this pile. This has been drying for about 2 years now. I see a fire ant hill that desperately wants to die. You guys ready to meet your maker? You bastards. I have no sympathy for fire ants. You send all your jerk relatives to sting my son's hand when he's 2 years old, I smite your entire colony. That's how I roll. Man, these are hot. Ah. How about some gloves? One thing to watch out for that I almost forgot about is wasps. They love to build nests in there. So this is what I got from the top 2 layers of that wood pile. As you can see, it's been drying since I cut it, since May of 23. These 2 pieces here I'm going to use for the legs. This whole batch of wood, including the pile that I took this from, came from 4 logs from a giant tree that fell in a local guy's backyard. And I saw this on Facebook Marketplace, and I got 4 guys. We scrambled into the car. We ran over there as quick as I could get over there and piled them on my trailer. And I said to the guy, I'm like, hey, can I, this is probably a fifth of what he had. I was like, hey, can I come back? We'll make multiple trips or whatever. He's like, nah, I got a guy coming who said he's going to cut all this stuff into firewood and burn it. And I'm like, yeah, but I mean, these are huge logs. I'll come back and get them, and I can use them, cut them up into lumber for woodworking. He's like, nah, sorry. I need them gone right now. So that was that. All that stuff ended up burning up in somebody's fire pit, I guess, which is crazy to me. I mean, this tree grew for 100 years and just ended up in smoke. Using the same techniques as I used to produce the legs, we're going to turn this stained, waterlogged, discolored, quote-unquote trash to this. The milling process is always kind of a trippy thing for me, to think that you could transform something that just appears so useless into some pretty beautiful stuff here. I just finished laying out the mortise and tenon locations for the 2 legs of the front of the cabinet. That's what this is right here. And then the cross piece here and that cross piece. And that is what you see here. And what I've done is I've laid out the mortise locations. And now I'm going to go do this on the mortiser, the mortising machine, which is a massive time saver. I've got the correct width, size, whatever you want to call it, of the tenons. Just a little bit of shaving off needed with the shoulder plane. And I'm going to mark which mortise goes to which tenon. This will become more and more important later on as we add mortises and tenons. So important to mark things out, and I just use a silly little system. I draw a symbol. You could use numbers, but that's not what I'm going to do. A little cloud over here, or a turd, depending on your point of view. Triangle. Circle. Or a 0. A little infinity sign. It's not an 8, it's an infinity sign. Star of David and a cross. I run out of symbol ideas after a while. These fit pretty much perfectly right off the saw. And the way that I do that is when I trim these pieces here, to size on the miter saw, I save the remnant so that I can use the remnant later on to do some trial cuts, like on the bandsaw and on the table saw, of these tenons, to make sure that I get the size right without having to potentially sacrifice these pieces that I've so painstakingly milled. Then when I go to put these pieces through the saw, I can be assured they're going to fit properly. So I cut the mortises first, and then I fit the tenons to the mortises. That's how I do it. So I cut all these on the mortiser. Well, I cut the mortises on the mortiser, obviously, and the tenons on the bandsaw, and I cut the cheeks on the table saw. But there's still some handwork required. I still have to trim. I mean, I could do all this on the table saw as well, but actually I want to keep the same settings because all the tenon dimensions are the same for all these tenons, and I've only cut about a quarter of the tenons that I have to cut. And I don't want to mess up those perfect settings that I achieved on the bandsaw and on the table saw. So instead of cutting the cheeks of the tenon here on the table saw and messing up my settings, I'm just going to go ahead and trim them with the handsaw. So that's what I'm doing here. I like to chamfer the ends of my tenons, and I do that for a couple reasons. One reason is that I don't want the tenon, as it's on its way home into the mortise, to scrape all the glue off the side of the mortise like it would if these edges were sharp. I want the glue to be distributed like it's supposed to be. And then another reason is to give the glue, the excess glue, a little bit of an escape route, you know, at the bottom of the mortise. And also it just kind of looks cool, you know. I mean, that's really the main thing. All right, assembly time. Well, first assembly of many time. I'm going to assemble this, the front and the back section, so that I can accurately mark out how these connect with each other. Otherwise, I risk making a terrible error, and I am not a fan of those kinds of errors. In the forming of the legs, you know, the shaping of the legs, I'm using a piece of scrap, thin plywood to make a template. I might have previously just kind of tried to eyeball some curves in there, but that just never was a satisfactory result as far as I'm concerned. So I'm taking the time, even though it's kind of annoying to have to do it, and making some blanks, and then I'm tracing the profile onto each leg, and that way I know that each leg is, you know, symmetrical, and it's not a guess. slightly embarrassing to admit this, but in my early days of woodworking, I remember reading about the need to account for humidity and the expansion and contraction that occurs during the life of a cabinet or piece of furniture. And you got to construct the cabinet in a certain way that allows the thing to expand and contract without it destroying itself. And I remember thinking these words, oh, that doesn't apply. I mean, I'll be okay. It won't apply to me. And hard to come to terms with that kind of stupidity, but it's also amazing how many pieces of furniture I made before I finally learned that, hey, guess what? The laws of physics do apply to me, as it turns out. So these days, I'm pretty respectful of those realities. I try to build knowing that the cabinet is going to change dimensions. I've got what's going to be 3 panels. I'm about to glue them up. This one here is a side panel that will be visible, as is this one. This is, pretty much scrap wood, scrap white oak that wouldn't really be usable for anything that's going to be visible in a piece of furniture. And I wouldn't even use this in the back of a piece of furniture at all if I were building this for a customer. But since we're building it for us, it seems a good use of stuff that would otherwise have been relegated to the fire pit. I sure do love that quarter sawn white oak fleck pattern. It's beautiful. When I glue these up, you won't be able to see a glue joint unless you really look for it, but even then, not. I sent this piece of wood through the planer multiple times and never even noticed. I noticed the black staining, but I didn't notice the shot pattern, and I suddenly realized that of course this is from somebody shooting a scatter gun into the tree, and that's why you see the little BB discoloration, the black discoloration there. And it reminds me of the very first tree that I cut down, which was also a white oak tree. Well, I didn't cut it down, it fell down, as it turns out, which is relevant to the story because I remember asking the guy whose property the tree fell down on. It was a beautiful old farm. When I was parceling the tree up into logs, my chainsaw encountered some metal, and I realized it was lead, as it turns out. So I asked the farmer, I was like, so has anybody ever shot into this tree before? He's like, yeah, me and my son have been shooting into it for years. And I realized that that's why the tree fell down. So here I'm cutting these panels to size, and then I'm putting the raised panel profile in them. And here I'm cutting the groove that's going to accept the panel in those cross pieces. I'm using a draw knife to put the initial rough profile that I want on there, and then I'm smoothing it out with a spoke shave. The curvature is just a bit too much for the spoke shave to bite on that top piece, so I'm using a file. I do a lot of pre-sanding. The cabinet looks as if it's glued up, but it's not. Sanding in its kind of assembled form is a good way to avoid sanding parts that shouldn't be sanded, such as joints.
What? What? Come on!
Now I'm doing one final assembly, test assembly before I glue it up. I glue this up in stages, so I won't glue the whole thing at one time. I'll glue I'll glue the left side first, and that's what I did. I don't show it here, but I think you get the point as far as glue ups go. And here I installed the dovetailed top cross pieces, and I'm just planing them down to final dimension. Actually, haven't glued them in yet. The cabinet so far, minus a floor, or the bottom I should say, a door, a drawer, and the top. But I recently, yesterday, completed the drawer slide system made out of pine at the sides that guide the drawer, and then the bottom that the drawer rides on. And I'm about to start constructing the drawer. Got a nice piece of quarter sawn white oak there for the front, and then pine sides and back for weight purposes. This thing's already getting pretty heavy. This was a terrible choice to use pine for the sides. Well, to use this kind of pine for the sides. Pine that I bought from Lowe's. I've used this pine in the back of the guitar cabinets. It's very, on the surface, it's very attractive. But I should have known, looking at the edge and looking at how far apart those growth rings are, that this is not a satisfactory material for joinery. But I'll find that out in a couple seconds, won't I? Well, I'm recutting these tails in different material. I chose not to use that pine. I just was getting what I would call unacceptable results, despite the fact that my chisels are razor sharp. I was just getting unacceptable amounts of tear out as I was chopping, and no wonder. I mean, the growth rings on that pine are so far apart. That stuff was grown as fast as is humanly possible to grow a tree, to get it to market as quick as possible. This is just to illustrate the difference between the level of detail that Sweet Gum can take with sharp tools versus that quote-unquote select pine, selected for how fast it can grow maybe. That's about it. I got into a hurry with these dovetails, especially the coping saw part where I was removing waste, and the saw slipped and it scraped across the dovetails and really caused some pretty good damage to one of those pins, to my mortification. I am not super enamored with the fit of these dovetails. This is probably the worst example that I can remember. So there's going to be quite a few gaps to fill, which this is I don't think I have a close-up shot, so this is full disclosure. Sometimes that's just the way it be. If I was making something for a customer, I would remake this drawer. But since it's not, we'll make do with what we have. Once I'm done with the shims that I'm going to fill these gaps with, I don't think anybody will be the wiser, but I'll know in my heart, and that's, quite enough. I haven't finalized the fit of the drawer yet, so the operation of it's a bit tight still. Get out there. But I wanted to show, without the top, the tabletop on there, I wanted to show some of the internals here. This is my mechanism for dealing with a drawer that wants to sag as you pull it out. So it's my anti-sag device. We all could use a little bit of that, I guess, as the years pile on. And then this, I guess I'll call it webbing. The drawer sits on that, and then the runners properly placed prevent the drawer from binding as you push it in and out. And then there's, the joinery, all this joinery that you don't see when the top is on, but that all these things are vital for the structure and the smooth operation of the cabinet mechanisms. A quick note on sharpening. I used to be paralyzed by this whole sharpening ideal, I'll call it. I mean, I was really into Japanese tools at the time. I still am, but tools and techniques. And one of the things that I read was that Japanese apprentices spend a couple years at the sharpening bench before they ever do any actual woodworking. And that fits with other things I know about Japanese culture. It's easy to get caught up in the details. There's a lot of opinions about how to sharpen out there. And so you can be paralyzed by how to correctly sharpen. But then I recall one time when I was in Indonesia, I saw a cabinet maker who was working without a bench or anything, just on the ground with minimal tools, and he was sharpening a chisel on the sidewalk. And he got it sharp. And it's like, I think the lesson here is to just get in there and do it. Stop being so afraid that you're not doing it exactly the correct way, and just get in there and sharpen your tools. I mean, it's good to know how to do it, obviously. It's good to know the technique. But don't get paralyzed by some unachievable ideal and then sacrifice productivity as a result. When I was in the Army band, starting around, 1998, I think, or 99, we would take these yearly trips to England, a town called Weymouth. And it was a really cool little town. But the only way that the local people could afford to have us there was to solicit volunteers from the local community to take one or two or three of us into their homes for lodging. They couldn't afford to put us up in hotels. And what a cool opportunity that was. I mean, I remember there were people that complained about it because they didn't want to stay with strangers, but most of us looked at it as the amazing thing it was. And me and another guy from the band stayed with a elderly couple named Harry and Valerie Black. And, they treated us like complete royalty. Harry would give us a little bit of whiskey in the evenings, by the firelight. And bring us breakfast in bed. I remember that very clearly. Here was this 70-year-old man, or probably older than that, walking up the stairs with his tray of food for us. And as a parting gift, I remember Harry giving me this molding plane, and it was, an antique thing, and I expected it would sit on a mantelpiece somewhere in the distant future and never be used as an actual tool. But as it turns out, that is the one tool that I have in my arsenal capable of doing this particular operation because of the profile of the blade. And so I'm happy to report that after all this time, it's achieved a unique place in my shop for this exact purpose. Thanks, Harry. Whenever I'm doing a project like this, meaning an involved project, I am constantly resisting the temptation to say, well, this is good enough, or my all-time standby favorite, which is, oh, I'll just get the cabinet inside the house, and then I'll do that little thing that I wanted to do to it. I'll do that later. It's like, no, that's never good. You get that cabinet out of the wood shop, and you're never going to do that thing that you said you're going to do. It's just going to be absent the thing that it needed for the entire life of the cabinet. I'm talking about things like a door latch, the door catch. Oh, I'll just make the door catch later. I want to use the cabinet right now. I want it in the house. I'll just make the door catch later. It's like, wrong. You're not going to. That cabinet will live its entire life without having a door catch. These are little cabinet buttons, as they're called, that attach the top to the cabinet. And I cut slots all the way around the perimeter of the inside of the cabinet to accommodate these things. And what I'm about to do is place the top, and then I'm going to use this protruding bit of the screw to mark hole locations so I can drill them into the underside of the top. And then, as you can see, the cabinet button sits just shy of the top, so that when I screw the screw in tight into the underside of the top, it'll pull the top down tight on top of the cabinet. So just to give you an idea of the finished product, here's the drawer opening. And then if we go in here underneath, you can see the cabinet buttons, which allow the top to be attached, but not restricted in terms of expansion and contraction. Here in Virginia, we've got a pretty wide disparity, humidity-wise, between the seasons, among the seasons. So this allows the top to expand and contract as it's needed without pulling itself apart or pulling the cabinet apart. I've got the rails and stiles of the door cut, and this is pretty much the last big operation of this cabinet, and then I'll thankfully be done, I hope. This thing has dragged on and on. When I only get to work on weekends, man, really steals your time. But anyway, rails and stiles are cut, and I wanted to use a rather boring, straight-grained stock for that purpose, because I don't want to detract attention from the main centerpiece, I guess, or one of the main centerpieces, which is the middle, this highly figured crotch section of a piece of white oak. This is from a batch, like a giant batch of trees that fell down in Hurricane Florence in 2018. And I was Johnny on the spot with my notepad to take down addresses and get permission to bring a mill in there and cut all this stuff up. I got thousands of board feet from that, just from that occurrence or that occasion alone. And I have separated out from all my other stock. I have these highly figured boards that I put a surface on just to kind of get an idea of what was under there. And the other side of this is still rough. But I also wanted to, when I put a surface on it, I wanted to make sure, how is this going to react when I put a surface on? Is it going to warp immediately? Is it going to be unusable? And this stuff, this white oak, it's been super stable, even though it's highly figured. So I've been gratified to see that. But with this particular piece, I've been kind of looking for an opportunity to use it. And I think this fits the bill. So once I get this door glued up with bridle joints, I'm gonna make bridle joints on this. I'm just gonna kind of take it and, move it around, find out where the best areas of that figured piece are, and then I'm gonna cut it to size accordingly. So on to the bridle joints. I kind of move on. I don't show the joinery construction here for the door because it's pretty much a duplicate of what I already did earlier in this video. But I will show you the final result of the bridle joints here later on. Here I'm doing the mortises for the hinges, and I use one of my favorite specialty hand planes, hinge mortise or butt mortise plane, which is great for getting a uniform depth. You'll notice later on in the video that I've switched to nickel-plated hinges instead of the gold ones that I am putting on here. And that's because my wife convinced me that the gold ones didn't match the aluminum hardware. And that's just something I didn't really notice being colorblind. It didn't really stand out to me. But now that I see the difference, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess you're right. As usual. So I've got the hinges installed here, mortised into the door, as you can see. And I'm about to fit the door. I did a little bit of fitting already. What I did was either the door or this opening, the door opening wasn't perfectly square before I started fitting the door. And so what I did was I took a bit off this part of the door. So now there's an even gap at the top there, which is that's what I wanted. I want that. I want there to be I'd say 1/8 inch gap there. And what I'm about to do is I'm going to use some playing cards, and I'm going to put 2 or 3 here, 2 or 3 here. I'm going to place the door there, and then I'm going to mark out where these hinges should go. So the reason I use the shims is to get the door to kind of simulate where it's going to sit. And when I put those cards there, it'll move the door up, obviously, and then that gap will be just right. Well, I got the door fit the way I like it, which is a relatively similar gap all the way around. One of the challenges of fitting a door is that you want it to fit. You want it to fit. That's the challenge. No, you want it to remain the right dimensions all year round. So humidity changes through the seasons, and if you fit a door in the winter and it's a perfect fit, you don't leave much room to work with, meaning very little gap, then it's possible that in the summer when the humidity spikes, you're going to have a door that suddenly doesn't fit, especially if you put this in the bathroom or somewhere where there's a lot more moisture in the air. So I like to have a little less than a 1/16 inch gap all the way around. The hardware, the drawer pull and the door pull. So this cabinet is going into the living room where all my guitar humidors live. And I did the door and drawer pulls of the humidors in the shape of parts of the guitar. So the drawer pull is in the shape of the top of the headstock, and then the door pull looks like a guitar body, obviously. And so I decided to just kind of match the decorum that we already have in there. I've got a air-powered micro router, basically, is what this is. Carbide tipped, so but it's made for putting a profile on metal. Great little tool. It's like $70. And then I like the brushed aluminum look. That wasn't an invitation for you to come in here. Get out of here. This is a man's domain where a man is doing real work with his extremely attractive glasses. What are you looking at?
He's here. Your hair?
Yeah.
Is he puppy?
Come here. Okay. Yeah, you're dead to me then. Get out of here, like I said initially. No, I don't even acknowledge your presence.
Give puppy a hug. She's getting sick.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Maybe she did.
Oh, great. Oh, now you tell me. After I get my face right up in her face. Yeah, buddy.
Dinner's almost ready.
Okay. And I am also almost ready to eat that dinner. For a second there, I thought I marked out the holes backwards. And I may have done that. I have made more boneheaded errors than that. Let me assure you. And then I use a mixture of polyurethane, turpentine, and Danish oil. It's a great finish that I stole from another woodworker. It's attractive, and it's easy to apply, and it's durable. So those are 3 great traits for a finish. And final step here, we've brought the cabinet into the house. I was amazed how heavy this thing is. I mean, it's almost too much for me to pick up. Of course, you could say, well, that's because you're weak. You'd be wrong, though. I'm amazingly strong. And if I can do it, I like to align these slots so they're all facing the same direction. For the door, I do pretty much the same thing as I always do with my doors. I don't know when I adopted this, but I make a little catch with a magnet on it, and then on the door, I have a threaded insert in there, and then I threaded a little bolt in there, and the bolt interacts with the catch. And I can adjust that bolt as needed, like if there's a change in the physical structure of the cabinet because of humidity, a slight change, I can just alter that a little bit, and then there you have it. There's the drawer. There's what's in the drawer. All kinds of little books and little activities and things, flashcards. The door with its bridle joints, which I never did really show. There's the internals. All the books that my kids love to read. That's the top with the sunbeam shining on it. I'm surprised there's not a cat laying in it. I wanted a really straight, simple grain, clear, relatively knot free for the middle part, and then I wanted to have the borders, the two kind of book matched breadboard ends, have something a little more interesting figure wise. I think what's one of the cool things that I didn't really expect, but if you look there and there, it's a mirrored pattern there.
Oh, in my Bible verse, ye are the light of the world. Matthew 5:14.
Nice.
Oh, look, puppy.
It only took him 3 weeks to memorize. Cock-a-doodle-doo. Yeah. E-I-E-I-O. And on that farm, he had a moo. What's a cow say? That's right. Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O. And on the farm, he had some porkers.
This is
Some
going
pigs.
With a shelf in
Pigs. What's a pig
a
say?
library. Ooh.
You usually learn that as quick as possible, for that describes your eating habits.
Kitty cat.
Kitty cat.
Kitty cat.
What's a kitty cat say?
Meow.
Meow. Tell mommy what a crow says.
Oh, Benjamin. Go.
That's a guck. Yes.
Magic
A guck says quack.
Quack. Magic treehouse. Why is this hippo not in water? Oh, you got a cow, buddy.
Hippos aren't always in water.
I thought they would die if they were outside of water.
No. They're mammals, buddy. Of course, whales are mammals too, and they would die if they were outside of water. But not hippos. Yummy. Save that one for later. This is my 12th beer.